Has college sports just become a big cash grab? Locked on Sunbelt.
You are Locked on Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Dave Schultz, Locked on Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Kalshi. For limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. All right, so this is going to be one episode on what has obviously become college sports. And I do want to talk about it, and we'll get to how it affects the Sun Belt, because we obviously all see how it affects the G5, the G6, and specifically the Sun Belt, right? Bill Simmons is hanging out with Bob Chesney. I don't remember Bill Simmons hanging out with Bob Chesney when he was in Harrisonburg, but he's hanging out with him when he's in Westwood. There you go. All right, so the cash grab didn't start yesterday, all right? I think it was a public speaking course in college, and I did a study, if you will, that only a few colleges make money, all right, that the profits were not huge. And I had a professor who was not a big sports fan. He may have been a Syracuse football and basketball fan, but that was about it. Sports was not his thing, except those two sports. I went to school at SUNY Oswego. If you don't think it's cold enough in Syracuse, you go to Oswego. All right. I had a good time. That's not the problem. That's not the issue. All right. Anyways, he was like, and this is in 1990 or 1991. He's like, schools and athletic departments are not there to turn a profit. They will spend every dime that they have. Either the coaches get it, the administrators get it, or usually new facilities get it, right? Even at that point in time, they don't play there anymore. I don't know what the arena's called, but, the Carrier Dome was not even, it was just a decade old. They started playing in the Carrier Dome in 1980. This is 1990. That's where Syracuse played football and basketball. And so that's where the money went. And the big money still wasn't really there yet. Do we need to go back to look how much, Tom Osborne was making at Nebraska, or Bo Schembechler making at Michigan? Probably in 90 it was not there. But in the 80s, I guess, 1980, 1981, to me, that's when college, well, my generation, right? When Miami won the national championship. And that's kind of when ESPN got into the game, right? Maybe right around then. And that's the first part of the money started flowing in. But because ESPN was, for all these years, double dipping. They get the ad revenue and they get the money from the cable companies, whereas CBS and ABC don't really get that. Right? They're just on cable. No one's paying for them to be on. They want to be on the cable deal. So the networks weren't double dipping. ESPN was, and that's how ESPN became so profitable and so huge. In really what was a rather quick time frame, in about 15 years. I know, Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann probably, that was probably college for me, the Big Show. And maybe a couple of years later than that, in the 90s. But it didn't last all that long. And by the time they were done, still probably wasn't 20 years that ESPN was going. But they probably had the NFL now. Shortly thereafter that, they got Major League Baseball, right? It wasn't just American rules football. And that's where it was ESPN who put like the NCAA basketball tournament on. And that's where, Dick Vitale is standing on his head. I don't know, I'm going to throw a name out there. If Dennis Denbo wins a college basketball game in the NCAA tournament. which I think he did. It's not Wyoming, Montana State, something like that. But that's where we started, loving the NCAA tournament was ESPN, because we got all the games, which is before we were only watching the game that was on in our area, and they would switch in between contests if we were lucky. Right? I mean, think about it. We can even go to the Masters. For the longest time, the Masters, they're in control. The one thing that the TV is not. They are in control of their own product. We would only see Saturday and Sunday, maybe a little bit on Thursday and Friday eventually, but we'd only see like the back end. We'd only see like the last 9 holes. And eventually they decided they could make more money showing more holes and more of the golf. And that's why we all love the Masters, because we know the course, right? We know the second hole is this reachable par 5. And on Sunday, the ball will feed down to the hole to where, albatross is feasible, and certainly an eagle is gettable. So we know that. We know amen corner, like the back of our hands, because they started showing more, and that became with all of the money. All right. And I don't know who the first, Howard Schellenberger left Miami and came up here, came up to Louisville. Maybe he was the first, big time money coach, because that's where it started. Right, the coaches started getting. I don't think Bear Bryant was paid some enormous, a ridiculous sum. So it would have probably been him to begin with, and then because he leaves Miami, and then I guess it's Jimmy Johnson is right after that at Miami. I guess, and then Dennis Erickson. So Jimmy Johnson goes in there and wins in Miami, and then he goes to the Cowboys, and that's a different story. But that's maybe when the coaches started getting more money, because what the coaches did was look how much the colleges were getting, seeing all that revenue come in, right? The Big Ten, the ACC at the time, doing Raycon. SEC wasn't quite as mobilized. It was really just kind of Alabama, Auburn, certainly Herschel Walker, Georgia was a big deal. Texas was a huge deal. Earl Campbell back in the day. Oklahoma was a big deal with Billy Sims. And these coaches started realizing, we got 100,000 fans coming to our games, buying all the merchandise, all the concessions, and we're not making quite as much money as we should. So then the coaches started making money. And lo and behold, it has taken forever for the players to get in on the action. And that's what we'll talk about next. We'll talk about that right after I tell you about Game Time and Poncho. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees. Buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans turning to Game Time. The app is built to make buying tickets simple, with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to events you want without the usual hassle. Honestly, I want to know exactly what my view will look like and exactly what I'm paying. Game Time helps me know those two things at a time. I can buy tickets with a lot more confidence. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And Poncho, let me tell you about Poncho. If you're like me and you basically live in your game day gear during football season, you're going to want to check out Poncho's new game day collection. It's one of those things where it's performance shirt. It doesn't look like a performance shirt. It looks clean, sharp, like something you'd actually want to wear all day. Plus, you get to rep your team in style. And the best part, it's built for real life. Super lightweight, breathable, and comfortable enough that you can throw it on for a full day of tailgating, sitting in the stadium, or just hanging out watching the game with friends without ever feeling like you need to change. And what I really like is that you're not stuck with one size fit all situation either. You can dial in the fit with regular slim or tall, plus short or long sleeves. And if you grabbed your shirt between August 2nd and through September 7th, you're covered by Poncho's Natty Back Guarantee. If your team wins the college football national championship, Poncho will give you a full refund on your purchase, plus you keep the shirt. All right, so now you guys have seen me wear that JMU shirt, really comfortable. But you may not have known I gave a tour last Friday. And again, wouldn't you know it, ironically enough, or is it a coincidence? We were talking about my Sunbelt podcast, and the gentleman was wearing a Poncho shirt. I didn't realize it until I saw a little tag on his pocket. It's really comfortable. And he even told me, I love these shirts. I have a closet full of them. Go to poncho.com/lockedon and enter your email to get $10 off and free shipping on your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/lockedon. Head there, drop in your email, and get $10 off and free shipping. And once you try one, you will not stop. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Talking about the cash grab in the NCAA, can I tell you this? I thought somewhere along the way, and we may be at that point, shockingly enough. I thought somewhere we were going to run out of money. That the networks were going to run out of money. They just don't have enough money to keep up. That someone's going to say no. Like back when Letterman was on CBS, CBS Sports was a loss leader. They would lose money because they would end up promoting their shows. And eventually, when you know it, they became the number one network because they got back into the NFL. NBC had lost the rights, and CBS got the NFL. And all of a sudden, guess who's the number one network, right? And I don't know if they're making money on the Super Bowl. I don't think they are. That is a loss leader. But people are watching for 3 or 4 hours. They're talking about it the next day. The commercials cost a fortune. And so that's what sports used to be. And I thought somewhere along the way they would run out of money. I did not realize streaming services were coming, right? And Amazon doesn't need to make a profit. They make huge profits, right? Netflix, same thing. Apple TV, same thing. Now they're in on it, all right? And there was a point in time, and I don't know how many people listen to my radio show watching this podcast, but I thought somewhere along the way during the week of a national championship, whether it be a Final Four or a college football game, that the players were going to get together and, you know what? This is a good time to negotiate. We're not taking the field until we get a little piece of the pie, because all week they're going to hear about the $1 billion that the NCAA tournament generated, or the $1 billion that the national championship in football generated, whatever the case is. They're like, how much? Let's start doing that math. And they made a movie that didn't get a lot of pub. It wasn't a very good movie, I guess. National Champions. And that was exactly the story. Exactly the story. And so finally, the players are getting in on the action. And it hasn't been that long. Let's go back more professionally than anything else. I was watching Moneyball. I don't know why, but I was watching Moneyball. And Johnny Damon signed with the A's for 4 years, $31 million in 2002. So about a $7.5 million year contract. All right. You got a handful of college quarterbacks almost making that, like $5 to $6 million this year. right? Kyle Tucker this year is making like $60 million a year for the Cubs. I mean, the money just doesn't go away. And so the college football players are finally getting in on it. Now, the name, image, and likeness thing has gotten out of control. It's not that. It's not, Dave Schultz going to the car dealer signing some autographs. They're getting paid to play. And that's not what it was supposed to be. That's what it has turned into. And the schools are now doing that. The schools are now paying. See LSU. Everybody else is doing it as well. It's just an example of what's going on in the news right now. And because it is amazing when you get into this, right? And baseball is going to go through this, and everyone always blames the players, and everyone's on the owner's side. The owners are the billionaires, right? The schools have all the money. The networks have all the money. Some of these players have no money, right? Was it Christian Wilkins? There was a Clemson defensive player. He didn't live at the facility, but he basically did. He came in Clemson gear. Morning, noon, and night, he would eat at the facility and go home to sleep. I mean, this was before they gave out money at school. He had no money. I'm not sure if and he drove a bike. I don't think he had a car. He had no money. And now they're finally getting into it. And of course, the fans are against him. Well, when I grow up or when I played, blah, 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 blah. That's what it is. Of course, comes some responsibility with that money. If, someone, that money's coming into LSU, someone's going to get cut. I don't know if it's going to be a guy getting paid. You would hope that it wouldn't be a guy who's on a scholarship. But that's what's going to happen. And finally, the players are getting in on the action with this. All right. And the coaches don't know how to handle it yet. Charles Huff made a point. I didn't understand it to begin with. He's the coach of Memphis, formerly of Marshall, Southern Miss, now Memphis. All right. I think he was the Penn State running back coach and Alabama running back coach. And he made a point. He's not going to tell you the starting quarterback from Memphis because he's like, UNLV wants to know. And he's like, it's different than it was 10 years ago. I'm like, well, no, UNLV always wanted to know. But here's his point. I got the backup quarterback, whoever that's going to be. And that guy's agent is going to tell him he'd get him out of here and go to somewhere else. So he's not wrong. He's like, I'm going to have to deal with that anyways come the day of the game, although the players probably know by now. That's a different story. But that's where we are, right? And that's why the NCAA or Congress, if the case may be, whatever, or the courts, right? You can't have one court in California, one court in New York, and one court in Louisiana, or one court here in Kentucky. All different rulings. That's not going to fly, all right? So you got to figure that out. Who's eligible and who's not. But again, I've also said this. The top players are usually going to go pro. But you don't have to be a top player to go cash in. There's some probably highly touted football players that are not necessarily pro players, right? We see that all the major league players, we'll say that, not necessarily pro players. And you see it more in baseball. You go through the time that I was in Baton Rouge, you can go through, 13, I was in Lafayette, but 13 through 19, and go check out all those great LSU teams and see how many guys are in the big leagues now. They had a lot of really good players. Played a couple of seasons, injury, whatever, not good enough. It's tough. And so you don't necessarily have to have major league dreams. Now you could try it just to do it while you're young. But some of these guys, I'm not talking about the guys who are pocketing millions. I'm talking about the guys who are pocketing, you can pocket a 5-figure salary. If you got 5 years, it was more a minute ago, but 5 years now, you can pocket a few $100,000. And, that you got down payment for a house or a nice apartment, car, sets you up for savings, and you're in good shape. Right when you leave college, the players are finally getting in on the action, but they're not the only ones. And here comes the problem. All right. And we will talk about how it affects the Sun Belt. But here comes the problem. Here come the venture capitalists. And if anybody can tell me when anybody but the venture capitalists benefited, let me know. All right. You can tell me Google or something. All the people made money on that. Apple. All right. We'll do that right after I tell you about Kelce. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season end? On Kelce, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Now, I'm going to tell you about the Browns and can they win 5 or more ball games? I don't think they are, and the odds are going up that they won't win that. All right. They're trading at a probability right now of 39%. While I was prepping, it actually went up to 39. It was 38, meaning a $100 trade pays out about just over $240 if they win less than 5 ball games. On Kelce, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kelce. Download the Kelce app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI, Kelce. Trade on anything. 18 and over only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kelce products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kelce.com/regulatory. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's talk about the venture capitalists, because now what we have seen in a little bit, and the Yankees are one of them, and that's before they got into venture capitalism. Someone figured out, maybe about 20 years ago, it's more profitable to finish second. You don't have to pay out as many contracts. Fans are still happy, whether you finish second in the division or finish second in the league or overall. More profitable to finish second. And now these assets have just grown to exorbitant amounts. This is the word I wanted to say before. Where Mark Walter doesn't own the Los Angeles Lakers for 2 years and turns $10 billion into $12.5 billion. He's got serious issues, though. Right? All of a sudden, A-Rod and his group on the T-Wolves for a minute and a half, and they just got bought. And so on and so forth. All right. We got, Dan Snyder had to put his team up, right? Sterling put his team up. Go see what the Clippers sold for just a handful of years ago and see what they're selling for. Steve Ballmer bought it for $2 billion. And the Lakers sold for 6 times that. So amazing. The thing is, they are pure profit. They are no emotion. Right? Back in my day, George Steinbrenner, all he cared about winning. Didn't care how he spent his money. He was more efficient with it later on, telling guys, I can't pay everybody the highest price. part of it is you will win here. You're certainly happy to go get more money elsewhere, but you're probably not going to win. And a couple of guys ended up doing that. Right? And then ended up coming back, actually. Jeff Nelson was one of those. That's a good example. Right? I can't pay everybody top dollar, but we can pay everybody high dollar because we want to win. Now, winning isn't the most important thing. All right. Yankees have a pretty good payroll. They don't overspend like they did before. All right. Red Sox got involved with VC. They're more efficient, if you will. And they're going to collect. Winning is not the priority for venture capitalists. Profit is the only priority for venture capitalists, right? We'll see. And there's very few people who can afford these kind of deals. Listening to the Pablo Torres of the world on a New York Times podcast of all things. But it's they're not interested, right? I mean, the Seahawks are getting purchased as the season begins. And the thing is that venture capitalists are seeping into college. Who knows what's going to happen there, right? I mean, some are looking at it. I think Keith Kill brought it up for the Sun Belt. The SEC is looking at it. The Big Ten is looking at it. The Big 12 is looking at it. Someone's going to go grab it. But then what happens if they are not quite as profitable? Are we firing people making $50,000, $60,000 a year and running on AI, all the marketing and all the advertising and all the scoreboard stuff? I don't know what's going to happen, right? Because sometimes these guys are going to call for their profits. Now, eventually, they may say, they may do what the Portland Trailblazers did, hired a one-year coach. Because it's really good money. Did you know that Curt Cignetti, and I meant to do this in another segment, Curt Cignetti, the coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, heading into his third year of Indiana, and it's been 2 heck of years, right? Went to the playoff in 1 year, won a national championship in the next. So that's a pretty good start. He's more than doubled his salary. His contract, let me see, I think I have it here. His contract was 6 years, $4.5 million annually. I think that's $27 million over the terms of the contract. Do you know he now has over $100 million deal? He's gone from 6 years, $4.5 million to 8 years, $13.2 million. He's on his 4th contract. 4th. Initial hire was November of 2023. 6 years, $4.5 million. Then he got 8 years, $8 million in November 2024. All right. Okay. So then he gets a second extension in October of 2025. You got an idea of what happened then? LSU opened up. Penn State opened up. He's from Pennsylvania. All right. And then he wins the national championship, and he gets bumped up to, he went from 6 years, $4.5 million, 8 years, $8 million annually, 8 years, $11.6 million. Now he's 8 years, $13.2 million following the national championship. Not saying he doesn't deserve it. Just saying he went from, what did I say, $4.5 million to $13.2 million. He's going to make in 2 years, 2 more years, what the whole last contract was worth, almost. And so when you come back to players, we need to settle down. But we'll see. Here's one of those things that's, spin into my head when we start talking about this. Those venture capitalists may start cutting those salaries back only because, well, what else are you going to make $5 million a year for coaching football? Well, they're going to be offering me more. Well, you go there, right? You go there. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, they could be keeping on going up because all the venture capitalist money is going to go up, but someone's going to come in for the profit. So how is this affecting the Sun Belt? Well, obviously, unfortunately, the Sun Belt, being the G6 that it is a little bit of a stepping stone. Unfortunately. Just coming up now, you got Bob Chesney going to be coaching UCLA. And more recently, even changing addresses in South Carolina, Coastal Carolina, Kevin Schnall, who came up through the program, going to South Carolina because they could pay more money. And so it is all a cash grab, right? And all the players from JMU went to UCLA to get more money. So many of the players from Marshall went to Southern Miss because they could get a little bit more money. And it is all just a big cash grab. But the question is this all going to come crashing down? It may have to do with Mark Walter. You can go find those podcasts out there. Those things hurt my head because he's connected to all these insurance companies. If these fail, that's a problem. But that's where we are. It's just all a big cash grab. You can look at just a simple guy like Ahmad Hardy, and we hope he's healthy and coming back as soon as possible. The kid ended up at ULM. No offense to ULM, but he was severely under-recruited. You know how I know he was under-recruited? He went to ULM, and then the next year, he led the SEC in rushing. Whoops. How much money do you think he got just going to Mizzou? And if he did what Kurt Cignetti did he renegotiate after leading the SEC in rushing? I'm sure that he did. We're going to collect a little bit more money this year, or I'm going somewhere else. Now, again, he had an unfortunate off-the-field incident, and hopefully he's coming back and will be healthy here as soon as possible. But, I mean, this is where we are. And now you've gotten to the point where the players are leaving the pros to come back to college. And thank goodness everybody says no. First of all, can you imagine this was the Patriot League? It's the FCS Patriot League. They said, no, I think it was Villanova. No, your quarterback is not eligible to play. Sorry. We are superseding the NCAA. Sorry. So then LSU was getting a couple of players. We'll mention this tomorrow as well. Sun Belt, they said no. Big Ten said no. And I believe also on Wednesday night or Tuesday night, the SEC said, nope, no pro players can come back here. On Monday, it was a wishy-washy comment. By Tuesday, the SEC said, thanks, you can't come. Now, are they going to get an injunction on that? Whatever. But you can try it and then not go to the college football playoffs. Then you're going to get a court ruling on that. Find a judge in Louisiana to put you in the college football playoffs. So that's where we are, right? We do, although I don't think so. It comes up every now and then. He's got to catch that ball. How much is he making, right? That happens to the pros. He's got to make that pass. That's an easy play. How much is he making? I'm not really thinking about that while I'm watching my college sports. All right. I think he should be making that play because he's a 4-star or a 5-star. That's what I think he should be making. Or maybe I have a couple of bucks on the game. That's a different story. But it is all a cash grab. And somewhere along the way, it's going to come crashing down. I don't know when. I thought it was going to come crashing down a long time ago. And then we invented streaming services. And now venture capitalism is getting into it. And these things have an evaluation of, billions and billions of dollars. Right? So we're all looking forward to the college football season. It starts this weekend. It starts this week. Right? North Carolina's kicking off, right? Belichick going to Ireland, kicking off. And how much money is he getting? And he's an awful football coach. He's an awful college football coach. Awful. No. All kinds of money. And that's what it's all about. Unfortunately, it has become a cash grab. But because the players are now doing it, then it becomes a whole thing. Whereas before, when the schools or the administrators or the coaches were doing it, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now that the players are doing it, now it's a big deal. When we lose our players down at the G6 level, going up to the Power 4 level, we all get upset. All right. It is unfortunate, but that's what it is. And you can't blame them for going. It's getting promoted. It's like getting promoted. All right. Sorry for my 35.5-minute rant on the cash grab that is. We'll talk more specific Sunbelt stuff. We'll probably have some quarterback news come Thursday and Friday, but I appreciate it. Appreciate you tuning in. Let me know what you think about the music on the daily morning videos. I think it's still too loud, and I am wasting about 18 seconds. We could just get into the meat of it. Just need the background music, thinking about those things. Don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Sunbelt. Really do appreciate it. Please like and share. Don't forget about those audio podcasts on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your audio podcasts. All right. I do appreciate you guys listening and all the comments. We are starting to get a lot of comments. And when it gets to be too much, don't worry about it. I will get to them eventually. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great day, everybody. And we will talk to you again on Thursday.